Welcome to Connected Leadership. I'm your host, Kimberly Dinville, the founder of Comment Leadership Development. My passion is helping others to develop their own leadership style and skills. Whether it's through one-on-one mentoring, writing, or speaking to groups of people, I love to discuss topics related to leadership and people management. We believe that anyone can be a leader, whether you're a people manager or not. We want to help you build the skills that help you connect and motivate people so they can reach their full potential. Thank you for joining us today, and let's dive in. Hello and good morning, everyone, to this week's episode. In our prior episode, we started our conversation about how you can help to save an employee who was previously a high performer but lately was not doing well. In that episode, we touched briefly on how it is easier to keep people engaged along the way, rather than trying to save them when things have started to fall apart. And we talked about how to create an overarching culture of engagement to help you in those efforts. As I mentioned before, employee engagement is a very large topic. And although I'm splitting it into 2 episodes, at least for now, there's a lot more to say on this topic than what I can cover in 2 brief podcast episodes. Please don't take our discussion as the end-all be-all to employee engagement, but instead use it to help foster thought and discussion about what you can do in your own environments. A word of caution before we get into individual engagement. Many of the things I am going to discuss below are things that you should do with all of your direct report employees, not just the ones who are struggling. There is a tight interconnection between the individual actions I am going to talk about and the overall culture of engagement from our last episode. We will talk about specific actions to save an employee, but as I mentioned last time, there is risk involved. You can risk spending time without any change in performance or behavior, or the amount of time necessary may cause you to lose focus on other important items. You could possibly alienate other team members because of your focus on someone who isn't doing well. Your other team members could view this as a form of favoritism, failure on the part of management to uphold standards, or that a poor performer is given attention while their own efforts are overlooked. Only you can determine if the possible reward outweighs these risks. While I think saving and turning around an employee can be rewarding, it is something that is best done cautiously and with a clear head on how you will mitigate the other possible issues that may arise. And with our disclaimers and cautions out of the way, let's get into individual engagement. Having an overarching culture will take you a long way on your efforts to engage with someone. It's like a puzzle where the culture pieces and the individual pieces all work together to form the bigger picture. Attentive listeners will note that I said with someone. You cannot engage at or to your employee. These are things that are active dialogue and action from both sides. So first up, get to know and understand the individual. You likely already have an idea of who your team member is and how they act while at the office. But to really engage with your team, you need to look a little deeper. This will be easier to do with some people more than others. I tend to start this process very early on in my getting to know you introduction phase. It makes it easier to pepper in other questions or discussions later if they're needed. Some of the things you should try to dig up. What drives and motivates them? Are they a private person, or do they like being on stage more? How much structure do they need? Do they thrive when given creativity and ability to find their own way? Or are they a paint-by-numbers type of person? Take an interest in their personal lives. You don't have to be friends and involved with each other outside of work, but understanding if they have stressors at home can help you anticipate when that stress leaks into the work environment, or vice versa. Remember, people are more than just their jobs. Next up, let them have a voice regarding their path. Help your team members have a say in what goes on around them. Make sure that they have a voice in goals, at least when it's realistic to do so. There may be certain targets or objectives that are non-negotiable. However, give your team members some opportunities to add in their own goals and express concern if something feels unrealistic. Look for possible objectives that help the employee feel like they are making a difference. People like to feel that they are important and not that they are just a body sitting in a seat. And as you're working on those goals, and in between those goal sessions, this shouldn't be a one-time effort, take time to discuss the person's long-term goals and aspirations. Where do they ultimately want to go, and what do they ultimately want to be? What kinds of activities can they do along the way to help them progress? You may be able to find something unique that helps your team or your org, and also helps your team member learn or practice something new, even if it's not part of the regular business or their day-to-day job activities. And finally, listen to ideas from your team members. Maybe one of them will have a brilliant idea for a new procedure, or an automation, or an initiative that can really help out the team or the business. You hired them to be experts at their jobs, so listen to the experts. And if they have a concern, listen carefully for those areas of opportunity. Disengagement frequently comes from a feeling of no one listens and no one cares. And as I noted in the culture episode, show appreciation and recognize their efforts. Remember to take the time to celebrate those successes. Thank your team member. Recognize them. If they've come up with a great idea, had a resounding success, or other major accomplishment, look for opportunities for them to shine in front of your senior leadership who can also show appreciation. Now we can get back to what started this whole conversation, saving an employee. Saving a disengaged employee can be challenging. It can also be rewarding. Occasionally, these people later turn into rock stars that are indispensable to the team. They can also be frustrating. There are times when instead of re-engaging, they become a drain on time, energy, and resources. Remember those risks that I talked about at the start of the episode. But if you are going to go down the path of saving an employee, here are some steps you can take to help you out. Start by looking for patterns. Is this a formerly high-performing employee or a perpetually low-performing one? Is this someone who regularly swings from one extreme to the other? It's not uncommon for people to go through periods of high engagement to disenchantment. Many people have a certain amount of variance from the middle that is affected by home or work events, stress, and other things that happen in life. What you should look for here are the movements that are far outside the norm. Once you find that deviation from the norm, the pattern, whatever, investigate the why. What might be driving the behavior? There can be any number of whys, ranging from the deeply personal to something well within management control. You can ask the employee directly, and trust me, in most cases, that is your best bet. But you also can, and should, look at the surrounding situation. Has something changed? Is there a new leader? Are they in a new role? Do they have new responsibilities? Is there a change in procedure? Did they receive a poor review? Was there a change in the team? There's any number of other environmental changes that have all been known to lead to disengagement. There may also be factors tied to wages, benefits, promotion opportunities, or other business factors that equal a lack of change rather than something new that was introduced. With your collected information, you can begin to plan a course of action. You can determine if this is a temporary issue, something that's just going on right now, that can be addressed with a shot in the arm type of effort. Or is what you see indicative of a longer term issue that may require a more systemic change. Not all of the whys I called out as possible causes can be easily addressed directly. And some of them you shouldn't try to address. You cannot undo primary or critical business changes because a single team member is unhappy. However, even if you can't fix the problem or you can't undo the change, take an opportunity to discuss it with your team member. Sometimes feeling like someone is listening helps. Now let's start looking at what you can do to re-engage the struggling team member. First up, let's go back to the basics. Make sure that you are caring for the individual engagement practices that we already discussed. Connect, recognize, appreciate, look for those development options, and so forth. Next, check to see how well things align to the individual. If they are a person who thrives on creativity, is there any autonomy or latitude you can give them so they can find their own way? Conversely, watch for things that may be too vague for someone who craves clearer direction. Take a look at the goals set for the employee and set aside time to review and discuss with them. Is there something that needs to be updated to reinvigorate that person? If there is something specific falling short, make sure you talk about the problem and any challenges your employee may be facing. Is there something that you can do? Is there a barrier that you can help knock down, or you can work around a problem? Sometimes disengagement simply comes from discouragement, particularly if your employee feels like they have to go it alone and don't know how to get support. If they feel doomed to fail, the level of energy is definitely going to lag. So to wrap up, saving a disengaged employee may not always be the right course for you to take. However, if you create an overall culture of engagement and you take the time to work closely with your team members, you are more likely to create loyal teams where disengagement is less likely to happen. And if it does happen, you can now use some of these steps to help turn around that employee. Sometimes that previously disengaged employee turns out to be one of the strongest members of your team. That's all for this episode. Thank you for joining in and listening. Don't forget to subscribe so you can be alerted when the next episode comes out. If you want to get more detail on today's topic, or you want to check out our other material, please visit us at cometleadership.com. You'll find a series of articles, templates, and training material. You can also email me directly at kimberly@cometleadership.com. Thanks for listening and have a fantastic day.